Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
As a young girl, she loved to write, and she hoped to become a teacher. But when she grew up, she chose to go to law school. Finally landing in the business world, she blossomed into a business leader, mentor, and writer. She now helps other women find their sacred work. Because you and I know that no story is that simple, you will want to tune in to this chat with Peggy Bodde, one God-fearing and grace-filled F50 woman. Hey, F50 women. Thank you so much for joining again. Today, I am with Peggy Bodde, and she has been a corporate manager, a leader for over 30 years. She has spent her entire life, she's been alive. She probably didn't mentor when she was 12 and 10. Maybe she did. We'll figure that out. But she spent her entire career mentoring women in business, which I love because it's such a hard place to navigate, especially as a woman who loves God. So I'm excited to hear about all that. She recently resigned her position. We'll hear about how recently that was as of this taping. As a senior vice president, to become a full-time writer. So talk about pivoting. This is amazing because I know a lot of us at this point want to do something that we're passionate about and that find our purpose. Peggy pursues her passion today, mentoring women by providing free career and leadership coaching via her foundation, Sacred Work, which I can't wait to hear about. So thank you so much, Peggy, for being here.
Thank you, Julia. I listen to your podcast regularly, so that makes me even more excited to be with you today.
Excellent. Thank you. We got a super listener. We're going to have to send her something special for being a super listener. And so let's just dive right in and let's hear about who you were as a younger woman. Let's help us to understand how you became the Peggy you are today.
All right. Well, I was an overachiever at a very young age. I was adopted as a baby, and my adoptive parents were very critical and abusive, which I know is not the typical adoption story, but I was always striving to please them. So I thought that if I excelled in enough areas, they would love me. So I made straight A's. I was in every club that was available. I took every opportunity to prove myself. Another interesting thing is that the home was a middle-class home. There was no drug and alcohol use involved, and we went to church 3 times a week. So everything appeared neat and tidy on the outside, and that actually made it more dangerous for me because there was no reason for anyone to suspect abuse. And I know that God was looking out for me during that difficult time because I had some incredible teachers who encouraged and nurtured me. I also started writing in elementary school. I had a strawberry shortcake journal that I wrote in regularly, which helped me cope with what was happening in the home. But I also had a teacher who saw writing potential in me, and he encouraged me to write and to enter writing contests. So school was a very, very safe place for me, and my teachers impacted me in a huge way. So I decided at a young age to become a teacher because I wanted to help kids in the same way my teachers had helped me. And obviously I ended up in business. So my path did not turn out exactly as I had planned, but I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yes, it really, really is. Yeah. Somehow I don't know if it's called derailed. We just, oh gosh, what is the word? You don't get derailed.
We take a
sidelined or you take a curve or something. Yeah. So tell us about what you do now. So then we can draw the line between the two as we get to the next step. So tell us about you now. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I graduated from college with a degree in English. And as you mentioned, I ended up working in business for the majority of my career. Before that, I did teach high school English and Spanish. And I had planned on going to law school, but I ended up taking that unexpected turn into the business world and stayed there. So in 2014, I left my position as the vice president, and I pursued a full-time writing career. And I did that by starting a freelance writing business called Word Studio. So today, as a living for my full-time job, I write for educational publishers, but my passion is writing to encourage and help other women. So I do that on the side.
Okay.
And along those lines, I am super excited because a few months ago, I signed a book contract with Wendy Lawton at Books and Such Literary Management, and she's helping me bring my potential book to market. So the working title is Sacred Work, Equipping Christian Women to Lead with Strength. And it was birthed from the time I spent as a corporate leader, but also the mentoring I continue to do with my foundation that you mentioned earlier, Sacred Work. And Sacred Work is really important to me because it's my way of giving back. And that's why I do all the leadership and career coaching for free for women.
Okay. So I have a few questions. If I can just back up.
Please.
One question I wanted to ask is, how did you stay faithful and believing in a God when you were with a family who believed in God so much, but just was doing wrong in a very critical area with you as a young child?
You know, I love that question because I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
And I will be upfront and say that it was a bumpy road.
Okay.
So obviously it was very difficult when I was hearing about Jesus in church and Sunday school and my little kids' youth program. And then I was seeing something different in the home that didn't match up.
Yeah.
So it was confusing, but I think it's God's grace that in my mind, I separated the two and I could see that something in the home wasn't right.
Okay.
And it is really against all odds that, I mean, I just think it's a testimony of God's grace because I really statistically shouldn't even be alive based on everything that I went through.
Wow.
But beyond that, to be a believer after growing up in a home environment like I did is, you know, it's kind of a miracle. But I also want to say that, especially if there are any listeners who have gone through traumatic childhoods, I think it's important for us to understand that God's okay with our questioning. I mean, I had to ask him, you know, hey, you're supposed to be my protector. You saw me before I was born. Why did you let this happen? He's okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, he's big enough to handle that. And I didn't have one single moment where all of a sudden I was saved and, you know, there was this big turning point. It was a gradual, bumpy journey, but God was faithful and he showed up big time in my life and loved me to him against all odds. So that's the best explanation I can give.
Yeah, that's amazing because I know there's a lot of us who grow up without that bumpy ride in terms of just life and as a child. And it's pretty smooth. And we don't have that faith. We don't have that trust. And I wonder sometimes if the bumps aren't the thing that we need to rely on him.
I think that's insightful because I think it's easy as humans to become self-reliant. And I think coming out of what I came out of really shows you how much you need God in your life for many, many reasons.
Yes. Yeah. And when you learn early to sort of rely on the lifeboat or the life raft later on in life, when things come, you're like, okay, I know what I need to go to and where I need to go.
Yes.
So that's very inspiring. So my other question is, what is your biggest lesson learned from being a corporate leader and loving God at the same time? And I ask that question because oftentimes, at least up to this point, up to very recently, actually, I very gently, but in a big way, separated the two. So I would go to work and it was almost like I was sort of a silent, secret Christian. And, you know, I tried to live it out in the way I treated people. but I didn't really talk about it and say it. People will say, well, why are you so happy? Or why are you so positive? And I would just say, well, but I wouldn't say, you know what, because God's grace is sufficient for me. And I am thankful to be here, those kind of things. So no more talking. My question is, tell us your biggest lesson balancing the two, or the biggest challenge.
I think I walked through a similar challenge to what you described.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hear people talk about witnessing. And as a leader in the workplace, I would feel guilty because I thought, I'm not witnessing, I'm not inviting people to church.
Yeah.
And then a friend said to me, witness is a noun and a verb. And you should really think about that. And as I prayed and reflected on it, God made it clear to me that guilt doesn't come from him. And carrying that burden of guilt because I wasn't, quote unquote, witnessing in a traditional sense, wasn't serving him and it wasn't serving me. Right. So I think as leaders, and even for women, Christian women in the workplace who are not leaders, I think there are many ways that we can show up for Christ, because as you know, in the business world, we are always going to come up against conflicts. Yes. We are always going to come up against crises. In my tenure, there was 9/11, there was the economic crisis of 2007, 2008. Yeah. What better way to shine Christ's light than to broker hope, than to be calm and peaceful when everyone else around you is struggling. Yes. I think that there are really specific opportunities that God gives us. And it doesn't mean you have to stand up in a room full of the people you manage or your peers and say, I'm Peggy Bodde and I'm a Christian, Right. God is more creative than that. Yeah. So once I realized that, I felt freed because I know God called me to be a leader. I have a heart for people. I love mentoring, and he was able to use all of that to bring glory to himself. And I felt very comfortable once I let go of that kind of guilt and shame and the traditional shadow that other people can cast on what being a witness in the workplace means.
Right. That expectation. I love that word, those words you use, broker hope, to broker hope. It's just almost like a business word and a spiritual word all in one. Brokering hope.
That's why I like it.
Yes.
That's why I like it. Because I think like you, I used to compartmentalize even subconsciously. Yes. Okay. I would even forget to pray about work things because I thought, okay, I'm going to pray about these things, but I need to handle the work stuff. And then it occurred to me, God cares about that too.
Yes, he does. Yes. I'm going to just throw this out there. The way you said God cares about this too, I think about, at least recently, I've been thinking about, we assume that God doesn't know that we go to the bathroom. All those little quiet things we do, we sort of shut God out, but he's like, hello, I know you use the bathroom. Yeah. I know you go to work. Yeah.
That is the truth. Yeah. And he cares. I mean, the Bible is full of examples of that. God cares about what we do for work and who we bring into that workspace when we show up. So I think it's important to blend the two as much as possible, because we shouldn't separate spiritual from professional.
Yeah. And I feel like this book that is coming out, Sacred Work, it's called. Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be so welcomed and needed, because I just don't think we do both of those things together.
Thank you, Julia.
Openly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. So tell us, what changed everything for you? Was it your childhood? Was it work? What was that big pivot moment? Or if there was one, maybe there was more than one, but what was your biggest life lesson through all of this?
One of the earliest changes that impacted the course of my life happened when my adoptive parents put me out of the home when I was 13. So this was actually
13.
Yes, 13. And I've had friends ask me, well, weren't you scared, or what was going through your mind? And it was actually a blessing.
Okay.
I was relieved. I felt like whatever I was walking into was going to be safer than what I was walking away from.
Yeah.
And I felt a peace and that I can't explain. And it's very strange, but the thought of leaving never occurred to me until they told me to get out. And when they told me to get out, it's almost like I needed that permission, and I left. The abuse had escalated, and I was also old enough that I realized that what was going on inside the home wasn't normal.
Yeah.
So I had started fighting back and threatening to expose my adoptive parents, and that's what led to them kicking me out. The foster system was never involved. There was no government oversight. I bounced around from family to family, and I ended up with a family called the Browns, and I call that by divine appointment.
Wow. Okay.
They already had 5 kids, and they took me in without hesitation. They believed in me, and they loved me unconditionally. And that was the first time I'd ever really experienced that from parental figures.
Okay.
So that was life-changing in countless ways. And I know that changed my trajectory. And, coming out of what I did, I had a lot of baggage from childhood. So there's a lot of big life lessons that I went through to get to where I am now.
Okay.
But kind of tagging on to what happened when I was 13, I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that everything happens for a reason. So as we just talked about, I believe that even though we may not understand why God allows certain things to happen, he wastes nothing and he redeems everything.
Wow.
I can't explain why he allowed what he did, but I know he was with me through that experience and that I'm alive today because of him. So I would have to say that is the life change, I guess, that brought the biggest life lesson.
Yeah. And did you fight this new family? You were a young teenager. We're already going through our own hormonal things. When you went into the Browns' home, were you resistant? Did you fight back? Did you have an attitude? I'm just trying to get a visual of how challenging that was for you to accept and open up.
It was actually the opposite, because I had been in 3 or 4 other homes before them.
Okay.
And every time, those homes were not bad environments. There was definitely good present, but I always felt like an inconvenience, like I would hear the parents bickering about me being there, or not believing that I had some part in being kicked out. So I always left because I felt unwanted, or I felt like I was causing conflict. Yeah. And here the Browns were with 5 kids, and, they were very upfront with me, you're going to have to get a job. But you can have a safe place here for as long as you need it. And I just rested right into that. It was just, I just felt like this is a safe haven, and I can trust these people, and they believe in me, and I trust them. And those were the best times of my life.
Wow. And did you ever ask them why? Do you ever ask the questions, why me, or why not me? Did you ever ask those questions of the Browns or of any other family, or yourself or God?
I definitely, there are definitely times even today where I have conversations with God where I'm like, why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to bounce from home to home?
Yeah.
And it's so funny you asked me about the Browns. I just saw, I call her Ma Brown. I just saw her. I was in Georgia after Christmas, and I visited with her. And, I can tell you that she was definitely my first mentor, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
But I've never asked them why, because she always led, I guess, by taking care of the people around her that God entrusted her with.
Yeah.
And I saw her do that over and over and over again, not just with me. And she kind of has a legacy of that with her biological kids. So I've never asked her why.
Right. You just thankful and glad. What a blessing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's so amazing. I'll share with you, my mother-in-law was like that. She took in everyone and anyone who needed it. And it was just foreign to me when I met my husband and got married. Of course, my parents are amazing and they gave and loved people, invited people in their home. But she was like mom to foster children, to me as a daughter-in-law, and just people with that heart. It's just a gem. And it's not, I don't want everybody to know I'm doing it. I just do it. And so
Right.
I often wonder why. And I know that's a question that sometimes I bet God's like, will you stop asking that question? But I'm just wondering, where does it come from?
I know.
You know?
That's true. Like, what makes someone not question bringing in a teenager?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
believing in them and giving them a safe place to land. I mean, that's especially when you have a house full of kids already.
Yes. There's a fearlessness to it. There's an
Yes.
openness to it. You bring your whole self, and I'm inviting you in, and I'm giving all of my space and all of my intimacy to you, and allow you to be part of it without question. I absolutely love it. I admire. Thank you to the Browns. I'll say I don't know them, but
Amen to
may
that.
God bless them. Yes. So during this process, during your, either as a young woman, as a corporate leader, you now, or anywhere in between, did you have a mentor? Is there anyone or others that helped you along the way?
So I mentioned the Browns and Mrs. Brown, Ma
Mhm.
Brown.
Yeah.
So to this day, she's a strong matriarch.
Okay.
And like I said, I didn't realize it as a kid, but she really showed me what it was like to lead as a woman. She pushed me to try new things, to be bold.
Yeah.
She was the first person to ever say the words to me, you can do anything you want to do.
Wow. Just
The
those
world,
words.
yes. And
How
looking me in
powerful
the
that is.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she showed me, and I know I already said this, but it made such a big impression on me. She showed me that the most important part of leadership is taking care of the people God has entrusted you with. And that is something I carried with me through every job I ever had.
Yes. Yes. Now you mentioned matriarch. So I'm just going to throw this right on the table. To you, what is a matriarch? What makes a powerful matriarch? Because I know as women 50 and over, that's who we are called to be, I think. We're called to
Yes.
be nurturers and supporters, and to really spread and change the world from the top down. We've learned so many lessons, so we're not just supposed to walk around being the 13-year-old thinking about us all the time.
Right.
But from your point of view, from your experience, what makes a powerful matriarch?
I think a powerful matriarch is a woman who is generous with her wisdom, who's
Okay.
proud of her experience,
Yes.
who's not ashamed of her age or where she came from,
Yeah.
or how far God has brought her.
Yeah.
And I think too, when I think of Ma Brown, I see a matriarch who is leaving a legacy in every one of her kids,
Okay.
and in the world around her. So I just think of her as a powerful person,
Okay.
but at the same time, gentle and generous, and godly,
Yeah.
and I think when you are those things, it's almost impossible not to leave a legacy, whether it's in the workplace or in your home or in your community. So yeah, I think we should embrace that term, matriarch.
Yes. I agree. Yeah. I want us to own it. I want us to bring it back and give it meaning again. Yes.
I'm with you.
Because there's so many who need, and I know I'm moving into another generation, so maybe my parents' generation said this about us, but I feel like the younger people just need it. And maybe it's just something that that's just a cycle, and we always need it. The younger generation will always need it. So if you met your younger self today, what is the one piece of advice you would give her?
I would say extend the same grace to yourself that you extend to others.
Yes.
I think that women, especially, and adults that come from traumatic childhoods, I think are prone to holding themselves to really unrealistic standards. And that is exhausting. So I would say extend grace to yourself. Okay. It's okay.
That's a beautiful one. Yes. Yeah. And as women, we can extend grace to so many people, but then we look in the mirror and we beat ourselves up.
Yeah. We're so critical of ourselves and harsh with ourselves. So I think we could benefit from a little more grace given to ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. So what's next for you? You told us about your book that's coming out. We can't wait to hear that one or read it or hear it, because now it's on Audible, probably be on Audible. But what else is next? Is there anything else in your toolbox? And would you, or is it in your purpose or your gut to tell your story, your overcoming story?
Those are great questions. So as far as my foundation, Sacred Work, I have a vision to one day have a group of women instead of just me who come alongside and mentor other women in leadership and career development.
Nice. Yeah.
As a ministry.
Yes, we need that.
That's my vision.
That. Yeah.
That is something I so wished for when I was a woman in business. So I want to be that for other women. And as you said, relative to the book, as far as writing, we'll see what happens with that. As far as my story, my personal story, it's really interesting because when I started podcasting, my whole idea was to speak into the workplace and to speak about leadership and empowering women. Yeah. And my personal story somehow came up, and there have been several times when people were more interested in that than my professional story. And so at first that kind of took me aback. And then I thought, God, if you want me to speak about that, if there's some hope I can breathe into other people's lives by sharing it, then I'm all in. So I'm just following his leading. And if the door opens for me to tell that story, I think it can really give other kids, adult children who have gone through what I've gone through hope and can empower them, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. There's nothing in my feeling, there's nothing more powerful than someone's real life story. At least for me, I've always learned so much from other people going through stuff. And then I oftentimes think back like, gosh, Julia, you're going through that, but really look what she did. Why are you complaining? What is wrong with you?
Same here. I mean, I think stories are powerful, and God has given each of us a really specific, unique story. And I don't think he gave us those stories to keep to ourselves.
Right. So. Yes. Yeah. Don't waste the experience. Don't waste the challenges. Use them for good. Use them, sort of take it back, own it back, and use it as a superpower. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us, let's get a little bit of advice from your playbook. What is one book you would advise all women to read, and why?
Okay, this is a very hard question for me because I am an avid reader. I have a library.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to books about business, leadership, and also Bible studies, it's really hard for me to down one book. But I did read a book recently, is one that I wish I would have read as a Christian woman leading in the marketplace. And it's called The Confidence Cornerstone, A Woman's Guide to Fearless Leadership.
Okay.
And it's by Catherine Gates. She is a Christian. She's the executive director for a nonprofit called Women in the Marketplace. And this organization has a heart for helping women grow in their careers and in their faith. And I love the organization. I know Catherine personally, so it was a joy for me to read this book. I just finished it recently. And so for any Christian woman that is kind of feeling the tension between being a Christian and being a leader or being in the secular workplace, this is a great book. So I recommend it.
Okay. And so what is one thing that you can't miss doing every day?
Well, at this point, it may not be a surprise, but I do my best to start out every day in God's word. And we live out in the country by the national forest. So when I take my lunchtime hike, I call that my prayer walk.
Okay.
So I use that time to pray. And there are times I get busy like anyone else, and I miss that one of those practices. But when I do, I always I always regret it because I think anchoring into our faith is the best way to give our best every day.
Okay. And so why prayer? What does it do for you? For individuals who are like, why? I mean, yeah, why? What does it do for you? Why is it different when you don't do it in the morning before you start your day? Maybe give us some insight for those who might just not do it and may think it's not a big deal.
I really appreciate that question because I know that I've had people, who don't share the same beliefs say, well, what is it like? Is God like a vending machine? You put in the prayer request and out comes the answer. And, there's a lot of skepticism and honest questions about prayer. And for me, I am telling the world that I follow Christ. Well, how can I follow Christ if I don't have conversations with him, if I don't get to know him?
Yeah.
So whether it's our spouse, a friend, anybody, we can't have a relationship if we don't communicate.
Yeah.
And so for me, prayer is, yes, it is inviting God into all areas of my life. It is asking his help, but overall, he created us for relationship. And I'm going to honor that. I can't say that I have a relationship with him if I don't know him.
Yeah.
And if I don't talk to him. So to me, that's why prayer is so important, is I want to maintain that relationship, just like with my husband or my best friend who lives in another state. We talk every week. I mean, it's important. Communication is important for any relationship. And again, I can't claim relationship if I don't know who I'm in relationship with. So that's why it's important for me.
Very, very good point. So does he ever talk back to you?
Oh, yes. And I'm not talking tangibly. I'm not out in the middle of the national forest, and I see a burning bush or anything, but,
right.
But, it's amazing how God can speak through, if I have a specific question and then I hear a podcast on the response, and then I hear a sermon, and then a friend talks to me about the same thing. There's patterns, there's way that the Holy Spirit is so creative in how he reaches us, songs, movies. I think we have to be mindful and pay attention. And he definitely does speak into our lives, and he does answer prayer in that way.
Yeah. So you're not a ordained minister or any of those things, are you?
No.
Did you get educated? So my question is, how does an individual who just wants to love God as much as the one who studied his word, how do we do that as amateurs, or for the lack of a better word? How do you love God at the same level without having to do the study of it, or to know the background of it, or to know all the history of it? Because, we're working people, we have families, but we want to love God. How do we do that?
That makes me think about a time, the last year that I worked in corporate, I was doing a project where we were constructing a new flagship physical location, a new warehouse system. I had an hour commute one way. And I was praying in the car. I was falling asleep trying to do my Bible study. And I felt guilty about that. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, I'm not, my love for God is not where it needs to be right now. And it's almost like I heard the Holy Spirit say, who is criticizing you right now? Because it's not me.
Wow. Okay.
So I believe that God understands seasons. You look in the Bible, seasons are a part in the fabric of his word. He understands seasons. He understands if you're busy. He understands if you've got 5 kids and you're praying while you're folding the laundry. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
We come to him where we're at. We're honest.
Yeah.
If we have a 5-minute conversation with him or 30 minutes, I think we come to him where we're at. And if it needs to become more than that, he lets us know. Not other people. We don't look at other people. Right. We don't, we can't get oppressed by their opinions. Right. We have to care first and foremost what he thinks.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And then I imagine that's why we have each other, because where I'm falling down, you might have the scripture, or you might have the encouragement and I may not be able to find it myself or have the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. And there's times that we need prayer and we're exhausted from praying about a certain topic. And that's when, our Christian friends or spouse, whoever, picks up, lifts our arms up and prays for us, So yeah, I think we all go through different seasons at different times so that we can help each other.
Yes. And so tell us about your foundation. And how that works. And you were talking about building a community where there can be others, women who are helping to mentor other women. Tell us about that. Tell us about how we can engage with that and how that works in building exactly what you're talking about and what you're trying to make.
So right now, there's just me, and the way it works is that women will contact me, and usually they hear about me through word of mouth from other people that I've helped. And it's not like I'm not a certified coach or anything like that. It's not that type of program. Women usually contact me with a very specific need or pain point. So they might say, I want to transition careers, but I've been here for 10 years. Can you help me do that? Yeah. Or I need to prepare for a raise and I'm nervous about negotiating. Can you help me do that? So they come to me with a specific problem and then I help them solve that. And this past year, I helped about 13 people, actually men and women.
Nice.
Yes,
they need help too. Yes.
So women just, and everyone has a different style. Some women want to do mostly email because they're time starved and that's what they have time for. Other women want to jump on Zoom. So whatever forum works the best for them, that's how I respect that. And I meet them where they're at. So yeah, my vision is that one day other women who have worked in the marketplace would also make themselves available to field those types of needs and questions and calls. And, I'd really like to see that because this was the first year that I actually had to turn a couple people away because I just couldn't, my plate was too full and I couldn't do it. So I'd like to change that.
To expand, multiply yourself. Yes.
Yeah.
So with this sacred workbook that you're coming out with, maybe there'll be a workbook or training of some kind. Because even though you've been in leadership, maybe you don't know how to mentor, but maybe you want to. So do you envision maybe sort of a training for those who might be a little hesitant, but they have the experience?
That is a great idea. Yeah. I had not thought about that, but I will make a note of it. So thank you for that, Julia.
Yes, because we need them. Awesome. So I have one question for you. What is your message for the world? The world is going to end and there's going to be one video and it's going to be your message to the world. And that's what's going to move forward. All the other TikTok videos and stuff are going to disappear. It's just going to be you and your message. What do you think that would be?
I mean, I think the first thing that came to mind when you said that is the word hope, which is also my word for this year, but it's also a concept that has guided me through, kept me alive for the darkest part of my life. So I would say there is always hope and I'm living proof of that. Yeah. And that hope comes from, a God who is in charge, in control, and much bigger than we are. So I would tell the world to hold on to hope, and to bring hope. Hope is not some lofty idea on a Hallmark card. Yeah. I mean, hope is gritty. It's something that we need more of in the world. And I think it's something that each of us can contribute to the world in a different way to make it better. So I think we have to believe in it and believe in the source. So
yes, I feel like that's the note because it's something that's timeless. It's gritty. I like that you said it was gritty because it is.
If you are enjoying the F50 Woman podcast, don't forget to share your positive comments and ratings and share us on all your favorite social media channels. F50 Woman is a movement created for women, spread by women. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show and your host, Julia Jack.
So now this podcast is over. Please tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, how they can get in touch and get involved in the foundation, and where they can find you when they're ready to read this book that's coming out, which I'm going to be looking for too.
I will keep you posted on the book, Julia.
Yes.
So my website is peggybodde.com, and listeners can subscribe for free career and leadership resources, or they can also email me if they need a leadership or career mentor. I'm also really active on LinkedIn, and I have a private group for professional women there. It's called Sacred Work. So I'd love it if your listeners looked me up on LinkedIn and joined my community there.
Okay, great. And that's PeggybOdde, and all of the links will be in the show notes and on my website. And anyone who wants to email me, I'll direct you straight to Peggy. So thank you so much, Peggy. Is there anything else you want to leave us with as we end our time today?
I would just say, take whatever you've experienced in life and pay it forward. Use it to make the world a better place. That's something each of us can do. And I want to thank you for having me. Like I said, I listen to your podcast regularly, and I just loved our time together today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was such a blessing to have you.
You've been listening to the F50 Woman Podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.